Hello once again, and welcome to another edition of the SaskAgToday.com Roundtable. We're joined on the Roundtable by 620 CKRM AgriNews Director Ryan Young and the Chief Agricultural Editor for SaskAgToday.com Kevin Hursh. I'm your host, GX94 Yorkton Agriculture Director Doug Falconer. And we'll start off with the latest on the avian flu / bovine flu outbreak in the United States. There's been another case reported in North Carolina. And are you surprised by what's been going on in the U.S., Kevin?
Yeah, it's disconcerting, and I think there's a whole lot more questions than there are answers. The dairy industry is one thing, so it's crossed over into dairy cattle. As I understand it, there's no confirmed cases in beef cattle, which puzzles me. You would think that beef cattle and how they're raised would make them more susceptible to interaction with migratory waterfowl than cattle in dairy enclosures. So I don't quite understand that. And maybe it's just because the symptoms are not so serious that if you're not monitoring exact milk flow, maybe you don't see it. So it's still tough to know how this is going to play out. It appears that from everything that I've seen that it's fairly mild in dairy cattle and goes away, so shouldn't result in a huge cull of dairy cattle that would flood the beef market. But I still think it's something that really bears watching, that if we get some surprising new development, it could still be a worrisome situation. So it really bears watching.
Ryan, of course, it seems like livestock markets have actually been dropping in light of this.
Yeah, not only dropping, but either stagnant, dropping, or lately over the last few weeks, when it comes to the Saskatchewan cattle data, it's been kind of limited due to limited sales and volumes of cattle marketed and such. But yeah, for the most part, the prices have kind of been trending down. The situation down in the States has affected the Canadian market somewhat. But when I was talking to Brad Marcinek with the Ministry of Agriculture, he didn't seem too bearish on it. In fact, he still had kind of a positive outlook. So we'll see what happens in the coming weeks.
Might be just an overreaction in the market right now, considering what's been going on, and obviously no mortalities, I don't think, in the U.S. on these dairy cattle, so that's a positive thing. We'll move on now to Environment Canada releasing its numbers for March, and some areas of the province, Ryan, had more precipitation than others, and some were warmer than others, I guess, as well.
Yeah, Natalie Hazel with Environment Canada was kind of saying that March was a bit cooler than normal. I know in February especially, it was warmer than normal, so March kind of the opposite. In terms of precipitation, your area in Yorkton got the most, actually. It was about 168% of normal, which was quite surprising to see that statistic on the chart. Just kind of looking at the numbers here, Yorkton had about 33.6 millimeters of precipitation during the month, which is well above the normal average of 20 millimeters at this time of the year. She also noted some cooler temperatures depending on where you are in the province. Yorkton and Saskatoon kind of had the biggest temperature differences from the norm at about minus 3.8 degrees rather, compared to the averages. North Battleford and Moose Jaw not far behind at minus 3.7. Regina was right around minus 2.5 degree difference. The average mean temperature was about minus 7.3, so a bit cooler. But she did also note some warmer days in mid-March, kind of March 11th to 19th, temperatures being at zero or above zero. And I think that's right around the same time we had a few weather systems that kind of went by and brought some much needed moisture to some regions of the province. I know, especially in the Southwest as well, that's much needed, as well as in the West Central regions. So that's kind of how the weather kind of shook for the month of March.
Kevin, I guess your farm is in the southwest part of Saskatchewan, still pretty dry down there as far as you can tell.
Surface moisture is going to be decent for a little while, but that can change rapidly too. I really think that everybody's watching weather forecasts, and some indication that a pretty wide swath of Saskatchewan may see some significant snow and or rain by the middle of next week, and depending which forecast you look at, but the quantitative precipitation forecast looks fairly promising, which would be I don't think anybody would turn down moisture in most areas, although you guys in Yorkton and north from there, you guys have been hoarding all the moisture, so maybe with some of the runoff problems you say there's down in that area, maybe they don't want any more right now, but a lot of folks would love to see a good rain, and then seeding would get going in real earnest not long after that. There are a few scattered reports of people posting pictures of themselves on X, formerly Twitter, Rosetowns, some places in southwest Saskatchewan, southern Alberta, where there has been a little bit of seeding actually started, but people would love to see a rain and then get at seeding in real earnest. But what are you seeing, Doug? You see there was actually some runoff flooding in your neck of the woods?
Yeah, apparently the Water Security Agency issued a high flow water advisory on Thursday afternoon. They said that basically from that Kelvington all the way down to Norquay, through Yorkton down to about the Churchbridge, Lanchenberg area, that there's been some rather rapid snow melt. We had a pretty decent snowpack, as we were talking about. We had a pretty big dump of snow in early March, and then another big dump of snow at the end of March over the Easter long weekend. So we had a fair bit of snow in the past month, as Ryan had mentioned, when it comes to snowfall totals. And of course, we were getting up to 15 degrees some days. And I know I would go for a walk here. I live in Yorkton, and the water was just flowing into the drainage things here, like just flying in. Like it's like, well, you wouldn't want to get your leg caught in there because it was really going. And I mean, they say the communities themselves aren't in any danger, but there's been some reports of overland flooding over some grid roads, over some highways and that sort of thing. I think it was Highway 47 south of Buchanan a couple of days ago. And then just on Thursday in the McNutt area, which is of course on the Saskatchewan-Manitoba boundary. So there's been some rather rapid snow melt. And when I spoke with Patrick Boyle with the Water Security Agency, he said what they would really like to see is like if we had about a high of +5 and then drop down to a low of -5 overnight, just to kind of slow the melt down a bit. But it's, we're kind of at the mercy of the weather, but that's the way it's been here anyway. It's been really melting quickly in this area. Whether you like it or not, that's what's happening. So there's not much we can do about it, but obviously there's been some issues, and the Water Security Agency is monitoring the situation. As for the latest runoff report, that was released today too. And it sounds like there's still a decent snowpack in the Assiniboine River Basin, which is in our area of the province. So I'm not sure about the rest of the province. I think Regina, Saskatoon, I don't think there's much of any snow left in those cities. You can correct me if I'm wrong, Ryan.
No, you're pretty much bang on. Whatever snow we got, it's pretty much gone at this point. And earlier, kind of what you were saying about the water being pumped and whatnot, it kind of reminded me of the last time I was in St. Brew visiting my mother. My wife and I, we were driving out of St. Brew, and they had a water pump going in one of the ditches there because there was so much water. But I could imagine, I could imagine now there's not a whole lot of water or snow whatsoever. So, but around here in Regina, again, whatever snow is here is pretty much non-existent.
And as for the latest WASDE report that came out on Thursday, the United States Department of Agriculture released a report suggesting that soybeans in Brazil, that the numbers there are higher than expected. And it kind of took a hit on the markets on Thursday. They rebounded a bit on Friday. But Kevin, your reaction to the WASDE report and what it did to the markets?
Yeah, we saw, canola really struggled that one day. The losses were pretty steep. We had been making some progress, and it bounced back a little bit at the end of the week. But as supply looks to increase anywhere in the world, it just makes the outlook more bearish for prices. The other thing about canola is our export pace on canola has been very slow. There's some estimates suggest that we're going to have 2 million tons of carryover at the end of the crop year. The crushers have been taking their fair share, but that huge increase in crush capacity that's forecast is not online yet, so they can only do so much. and exports have been slow, and mainly because producers with dropping prices have not been eager sellers. It's not that it couldn't have been moved, but it wasn't able to be moved at the prices that producers were hoping for.
And Ryan, you had a chance to speak with Adam Picallo about all of this. So what did he have to say about everything that's been going on in the last week?
Yeah, he was saying, I guess we'll start with the WASDE report. We kind of covered that first. He was feeling a bit bearish about the report. Although some statistics that he did share from the report, they were above expectations and they were up, whether it was month over month or year over year, whether it be, stocks for soybeans, corn, and wheat, they were all up. Soybean exports, however, they were down a couple of percent. Soybean oil stocks, however, were up about 3% month over month. Soybean stocks were up 8% month over month and 29% year over year. When it comes to wheat exports, those U.S. exports were down. And so as we kind of touched on, markets were down as a result too, but we're up in early trading today. The Chicago, Kansas, and Minneapolis contracts, they were kind of up on the day. Also, getting into the May Minneapolis wheat, I guess since I'm talking about that, it was relatively unchanged from what Picallo saw on the week, and it closed today at around $6.42 a bushel. That's up about 5 3/4 cents today. And for May canola, down about $10 a ton on the week, but it closed at around $632 a ton. So not a whole lot of change for both contracts this week. And again, Picallo, he was feeling pretty bearish about the report as kind of affected the markets. So we'll kind of see what happens between now and the next WASDE report, when that comes and how that'll affect the markets.
And Kevin, we caught you. You're on your way back from San Francisco. It was probably a pretty interesting trip for you.
Yeah, and not as much agriculture in this venture capital summit as I'd hoped for, but one thing that I really found interesting was talk to a drone manufacturer in making a US drone and can't keep up. And the situation in the US is quite different. In the US, anything that is registered to be sprayed by airplane, you can spray by drone. In Canada, no products can legally be sprayed by drone, even though a lot of that is happening. The products have not been registered here, and so that is slowed development. But 20 gallons doesn't sound like a lot for a drone to be carrying around doing a lot of spraying, but at the 2 gallon per acre rate that you apply a lot of products on, these folks are doing 40 acres an hour kind of thing with a tender system and a drone that goes out and sprays and comes right back to be filled up again. And they're charging the battery as they're filling it up, so they don't have to switch batteries. The battery is charged in place. They think this is a far better drone than the Chinese-made ones that are being marketed, and they can't keep up. If you wanted a drone from them, it'd be 2027 or 2028. So it shows that industry is just burgeoning, and people finding more and more uses for drone sprayers in the US. And I expect one way or the other, the things will open up in Canada. And after talking to him, I'm much more optimistic about the role that spray drones may play in agriculture, not only for grain farming, but in a lot of things, and replacing some of the aerial application, much of the aerial application, perhaps, that's currently being done by airplanes and helicopters.
All right. Well, on that note, that'll do it for this week's edition of the SaskAgToday.com Roundtable. On behalf of Chief Agricultural Editor of SaskAgToday.com, Kevin Hursh, and 620 CKRM Regina AgriNews Director Ryan Young, I'm GX94 Yorkton Agriculture Director Doug Falconer saying so long until next week.